I'm Gold Derby editor Daniel Montgomery here with Nanny production designer Jonathan Guggenheim. Now, the film takes place in a real world urban setting, but it also has supernatural elements. What did you think about those elements when you first read the script?
Well, the script blew me away upon the very first read, and it was so incredibly visual. She has a very visual style when she's writing, very descriptive style, and it was one of the main reasons I was so attracted to the script. I personally, my favorite films are psychological thrillers that have this tinge of the surreal. And I read that and I was just like, this is perfect. This is exactly what I'm looking for in a script. And I'm the physical manifestation of those supernatural elements was really exciting to me, and how we were going to be able to bend the physical space to make it feel as if the lead character Aisha is, mentally breaking down. Those are always my favorite types of films to watch, and one of the main reasons I gravitated towards the script.
And what do you think it is about that sort of those surreal elements that you gravitate towards as a designer?
I think it's just it's imaginative, it's playful, it's there's I think there's a fine line between fantasy film, which certainly has its own following and its own alluring aesthetics, but there's something about the surreal that walks that line very delicately. You have to be grounded in a real world. As you say, we're in this urban setting, it's New York City. But when you see physical spaces being flooded with rain or water coming in, it's like that. To me, that's just something that's walking that line so delicately. It's like finding the space of how can we make this appear very real and very grounded, and this is a true character piece with real emotional stakes, but at the same time like this heightened and almost fantastical like setting. So I guess it's a fun challenge that presents itself.
And you are sort of expressing characters through the design because you're in their living spaces, and one of the most important locations in the story is Amy and Adam's apartment where Aisha is working. What went into creating that? What did you hope to convey in just who they were and what that kind of space was?
Yeah, Adam and Amy. So, in the schedule, Adam and Amy's condo, was it takes up. I mean, I want to say we shot for. I think it was a 26-day shoot, and we were there for 9 days. I mean, it was a pretty substantial block of time, and because of actor availability, it was to play first up. And so we really had to find a spot, or initially it was written as the Upper East Side, or excuse me, Upper West Side. And we were looking at all these very glossy condos, these existing condos, in these buildings that had clearly been, repurposed, and almost all of their architecture stripped away, and it was replaced with this veneer, which was attractive in one regard, but we were looking for something. The money story in this, in Nanny, is incredibly important in informing what these characters can afford. It's obviously written in the script, in dialogue, that Amy calls her space an overpriced shoebox. It's we wanted to set the tone that by most of American standards, Adam and Amy are doing very well, but by New York standards, they're pretty average, really, and financially struggling. And so we scouted for a really long time. I was digitally scouting we had a location manager in New York with boots on the ground, and he was doing a fantastic job finding spots. This was also really during the height of COVID, so it was rather difficult to get into spaces in New York. But we ultimately arrived at something that's a little bit less refined in one of these high-rise penthouse suites, and we found something that felt very grounded but chic or sleek, I guess I should say. And it 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 was in between these two locations, really. One was the spot we ended up using was in Tribeca, and the other one was in I think it was in like I forgot where exactly it was, but it came down to aesthetics versus logistical. There was a lot of logistical concerns with the spot we ended up using. Uh, I was I was really trying to push Rena and Nikiatu towards this other location because we were going to have more time in it, more prep time to really build out this lagoon-like environment that I wanted to create there. But instead, we went with this other spot that we had almost a day and a half, 2 days to prep, which is, you know, wild to think about now how we even pulled that off. I'm telling you, if you had moved that camera slightly to the left or the right of what you see on screen, you would have seen a disaster. There were boxes lying around of, crate and barrel boxes and all kinds of stuff. But we ultimately arrived at this spot because of where Adam and Amy were financially, and it made sense to the story that they would be it to us, to the audience. You see something that is just unattainable with massive windows of glass and a deck, an exterior porch overlooking Canal Street. I mean, things that are really untouchable to the majority of people, but living in that city and in that environment, you can feel how they would be financially strapped, which informs the story and their characters, and also obviously their relationship with Aisha.
And how do you go about twisting that, that location into that more surreal aspect when Aisha's having her visions, her supernatural encounters?
Yeah, that was one of our favorite things to tackle as a design team. The set decorator, Caroline Scott, she was really fantastic to work with because she instantly understood what we were going for, and it was we kept calling it like this nightmarish nautical theme, and we really just doubled down on that, and we chose this color palette that was very extreme in its tone. I mean, tonal, but also embracing all these different flavors of green. It was one of the first visuals that I got reading the script, and it was actually there's a moment where, if you recall in the film, Aisha is throwing on this red dress that Amy lends to her, which has multiple symbolic meaning. But I found this image of this African fashion photography of this woman trying on this red dress with this green background, and I was like, we have to recreate this. And so I just instantly I was throwing all these greens into the hopper and getting a bit worried that we were having maybe too many clashing greens. And it wasn't until I started doing some research into like Althea McNish from the 60s and 70s and her wild wallpapers, and David Hicks, saying his famous quote of "colors don't clash, they vibrate." And I was like, this is perfect. This is exactly what we need to be doing. And so I would, when Caroline and I were kind of creating the look of these spaces, we were thinking of all these different types of furniture that could resemble in a very abstract kind of way, this nautical theme of bringing in, even from shell-like lighting sconces to even floor lamps that had spidery legs, or end tables that resembled some kind of nautical creature. We wanted to incorporate all that stuff, and as the moments where Aisha is becoming further uh, invested in this family, all these themes present themselves even more, and it was our way of like manifesting this mythological creatures, and kind of the corruption of her own mind. We wanted the space to feel as if she was in a fishbowl that was quickly filling with water, both figuratively and literally.
Yeah, and you do have that literal fishbowl filling with water at one point.
Right.
How complicated is it to work with water in the way that it's incorporated in the film?
It's always difficult to work with water. It doesn't matter. It is always so difficult. Well, we built those. We built the bathroom, and we built her bedroom. We actually the house the condo that we used for Adam and Amy's it was architect who lived in the space, and so she did a fantastic job for her own living environment, but made it quite a challenge for us to recreate some of the architectural elements of her space. It had, you know, 10, I think even 12-foot high ceilings with these incredibly large custom doors that opened up onto the back deck. And so we knew that we needed to recreate these on stage so that we could, make it seem as if all of this was happening in the same spot. And I remember at one point, Rena brought up that she really wanted to push in with the camera and kind of slide across the floor and pan up to see the bed and the ceiling and all the water coming in. And we were like, wow, this is going to be a full-on build where we're going to have to hide all of our water wares. But ultimately we finessed that a little bit. Plus, we had a lot of help with VFX and post to kind of build out a ceiling, because we didn't have a proper ceiling structure in our build. But yeah, I think with water, you're just talking about the biggest issues are resets. We had several resets of bedding, obviously, but there were a couple of things, pieces of decor that they were one-offs, something that we just found at a antique shop or something, and we were just hoping and crossing our fingers that once it got wet, it would work again.
And in addition to Amy and Adam, you've got living spaces for Aisha and Malik. What was it, like designing those and creating that contrast between their lives and sort of Amy and Adam?
Yeah, Catherine's place was one of my favorite sets, and Leslie Uggams is just amazing person in general, just the way she floats about the room. But so for that space in particular, I had poured myself into a ton of research, and there was this one artist in particular named Joanna Chamali. She's a African fiber artist who takes photographs and then traces over the photographs and kind of outlines them with this very vivid thread. And that was one of the main sources of inspiration for Aisha's world at the beginning of during my interview with Nikki Atu, and she just loved that artist so much that I wanted to kind of bring that into Aisha's world with, being inspired by African fashion photography and embracing the myriad of colors that appear in her world, and between Charlize's costume design plus Rena's, very vivid lighting, I think that we really brought in a ton of color and warmth into her world that we we knew we needed to have draw the line in the sand between Aisha's world and the Amy and Adam's condo. Something that was tonal and cold versus very warm um, and bright. And we took a page out of the book of Parasite for that too. That was a big sort. That was a film that had a lot of inspiration, and Nikiatu loves Bong's work anyway. And so I did a lot of research on his on how they created or how they separated that space, like just and it's very class driven, obviously, between here's a tonal world and here's the warm world that feels a little more rough hewn and more lived in, but familial and warm at the same time. And Catherine's was greatly inspired by an apartment that we scouted that belonged to this academic named Dr. Mary Louisa, I think her name was. And we walked in there and my eyes just lit up. I mean, this place was gorgeous. It was as if, like you walked into like a Harlem Renaissance museum, and it was just like perfectly preserved with all this beautiful art from the 60s and the 70s, and the wall-to-wall carpet and the wallpaper and she painted her whole foyer in this gold, and I was just blown away by that. I was taking pictures, and we were obviously hoping to use the space, but it didn't work out scheduling wise. And so I was like, I have to recreate this by doing, really embracing all these unique textures. And um, putting art in films is always its own arduous task, but I think that we embrace as much as we could. And I really put a lot of spread my roots very long to find, all this authentic works of art, especially from the Black community in Harlem, to put into Catherine's living space to make it feel not only warm and inviting for Aisha's initial meeting with her, but also to just speak from a place of authenticity.
Well, I want to congratulate you on your work on the film, and the incredible emotional impact it all has, and thank you so much for talking to me about it.
Oh yeah, thank you for having me, Daniel. This was fun. I hope I wasn't too long-winded. I get real excited talking about it again.
Oh no, not at all. It's always great to have someone who's enthusiastic about their work and love to talk about it.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me again.